This morning, I want to do something a little bit different, and I want to share a few. I want to share a few stories with you. These are not stories from the Bible. They are following biblical principles. But let me just get right into it. I want to share with you three stories of people who really lived, just like the Bible, people who really lived, but people who lived closer to our time. And I want to make a point, but I think it is important to show the continuity here. That the power of persistence and working through problems and hardship is not just something that passed away with the apostles, as some people would say. This is a fact of life, and I think that people who are highly successful at what they do, it's not that they were told yes more, it's that they knew how to move past the no's. So I want to tell you about three people. The first person, and they're all in different time periods. So I'll start with the earliest first. First person, she was actually born the first, good morning. She was the first person born in her family in freedom. She was born in 1967, 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. She had several siblings. They were all born into poverty. And she had pretty much a rough life. She was by the age of 7. Both her parents had been dead. She was living with a brother-in-law who was abusing her. And she ended up moving out, got married at the age of 14. Really, she got married not because of love, she says later in life. She got married because she wanted to escape the abuse at the hands of her brother-in-law, and in some ways was out of the frying pan and into the fire because she's married to this man. They have a kid. Their life isn't too much better. Within 6 years, he's dead. Now she's with a 2-year-old, raising her on her own, and she is, she's just kind of going through life, trying to figure out what's the next step. She ends up getting married again, and again, life isn't too much better. She's going from really job to job, place to place, trying to find her way in life. Her name is Sarah, by the way. I don't know if you know who I'm talking about, but her name is Sarah. And as if things couldn't get worse, she begins to lose her hair. And she's... this is not an uncommon thing at the time, by the way, because people weren't washing like we wash today. People didn't have access to hygiene products like we have today. And so she began to lose her hair. And at that time, in particular, I mean, even now in some ways, the hair was the crown of the woman. And so with her hair began to fade her self-confidence and her sense of beauty. And so here she is, not even 25 years old. She's been orphaned, she's been widowed, she's raising a child on her own, she's living in abject poverty, and now she's losing her hair and her health is declining. And one day she decides that something has to change. And she comes to the realization that her losing her hair, though hard for her, it is not uncommon. And so she realizes that perhaps, maybe, there's something in this. And I don't know if she comes to that decision consciously, but what she does is she decides to fight back. You know, that's my trademark, come back swinging. She decides to fight back. And so she's working as a laundry woman, and she's working with a lot of different chemicals. So when she finishes, she's a laundress, that's what they call it. When she finishes cleaning in the sinks, cleaning the clothes, she washes out the sinks, and she begins to mix different concoctions and put it in her hair because her goal is to get her hair to grow back. She said later in life she decided she was not going to let this beat her. So she begins to mix these chemicals in her hair. And the more she mixes them, there is some results, but then she goes back and she tries again, and she retools and tries again. Her brothers actually happen to be barbers, so they give her tips on hair care and hair products. And she realizes slowly that this is not just a problem for her, it's a passion. And you need to understand that your passion is often connected to a problem. And so she finally comes up with the right concoction that begins to make her hair glow a little bit and grow back and make it healthy. And then she comes up with this solution, and she says, or this idea, she says, maybe I could use this and it could benefit other people. So she begins to sell her products. So you got to see the progression. She goes from having a problem to solving a problem to using the problem to help other people. And she begins to sell her products. And the rest is history. She sells so many products that she becomes the first self-made woman millionaire in American history. The first. I want to repeat this again. She's a black woman, but she is the first person of any race in America, woman, to be a self-made millionaire. First woman ever in American history. She goes on and she creates a beauty line that is unrivaled. She becomes one of the wealthiest people of her time. Her name is Sarah Breedlove, but you know her by Madam C.J. Walker. And she becomes fabulously wealthy, so wealthy that her children's children lived in wealth. And to think that it all started from a problem. Let me tell you, I'm going to bring it all together, but let me tell you about somebody else. Lived a little bit later. His name is Harlan. Harlan grew up in the backwoods in the South, in the Midwest. He moved from place to place. He lived on farms. Harlan, like Sarah, did not have an easy life by any stretch of the imagination. Sarah was black, Harlan's white. But he's still dealing with the same situation. He was born a little bit later. He was born in 1890. But he grows up in this time that is, he's in poverty. His family's in poverty. They're moving from place to place. He's living in hard labor. And he goes through most of his life and he's working different jobs. He was an insurance salesman, then he's a gas station attendant, then he worked in a restaurant, then he opened up his own restaurant. And you would have thought he'd be successful at that, and he was for a while, but then the restaurant closed. This man has had a colored history. He was in the military for a while. When he comes back out and goes back to the restaurant business, he ends up getting in a shootout. Harlan is not somebody to be played with. He ends up getting in a shootout with a competitor over a sign on the road. And so here he is at 62 years old, and he has really nothing to show for his life. This is a true story. His name is Harlan. Harlan has nothing to show for his life. He's 62. I want to share this particularly for people who feel like they're too old to make a change. 62, he's bankrupt. He's lost his restaurant. He has no money. And he's looked over his life and he felt like he really has not left a legacy. But one thing I could say about Harlan, though broke, though without money, though perhaps without even investors or plan to get investors, he had a vision. And if it's one thing that is important in life, it is a vision. And he decided that he was not going to let his life get him down. He was not going to let the circumstances get the best of him. And so instead of opening another restaurant, he decided that he was going to take the best thing that he had and sell it to other restaurants that were already in place. And it's a lesson in that. It is the power of being able to reposition yourself. Perhaps he would have never reached success had he kept trying to open restaurants. So what he said was, instead of doing it that way, I'm just going to take what I have and I'm going to take the best thing that I can do and I'm going to put all my energy into it. And so he fully committed himself. And the best thing he could do was fried chicken. And so he fried chicken and he went to restaurant to basically tell them to say, I'll come in and I'll cook fried chicken for you. I'll pre-cook it and show you how to kind of fry it up and heat it he had a special season, he had a special patent that actually he learned during the Great Depression when he was building this restaurant that ended up failing. So he knew how to fry chicken well. He just didn't know how to run the restaurants the way he wanted to run the restaurants. Good morning, y'all. Thanks for joining. So Harlan goes around. Many people say, no, we don't even know who you are and we don't need you to come here and fry chicken for us. But thank you, but no thanks. But there were a few restaurants that restaurateurs that tasted his chicken, said we like it. Say, yeah, why don't you come bring up a little bit of your chickens? And so he'd go from place to place frying his chicken. And as time went on, he built up enough money from doing that he could open his own restaurant again. And he decided that his restaurant would focus on frying chicken instead of doing all these other things. You know, I meet people who say, you know, Darrell, I'm good at a lot of things. That's the problem, and you're great at nothing. Harlan said, I'm not going to try to be good at a lot of things. The last restaurant he had, which failed, he was selling all types of different products. He said, now we're just going to focus on chicken. And the rest is history. He ended up building this chicken business to something that nobody could even foresee. Investors swooped in, saw what he was doing. He ended up franchising out his business, selling his business, but he remained in control of the operations and remained this brand ambassador. And his name is Harlan Sanders, but you know him as Colonel Sanders. He is not an actual colonel, but it was an honorary title given to him by the Kentucky governor, and so that's what he went by. And he was 62 when he started this. He died at 90 years old. And they asked him toward the end of his life, did you ever think that you would, that your whole life would turn around at that age? And he said, and these are not my words, these are his words. He said, I knew that despite everything that was happening in my life and all of my failures, that God gave me a gift to fry chicken. And I decided to put everything in that. And so he is really the modern day example of the latter of his life being better than the former. Last story I want to tell you. This man was born in 1969. He is Emmett. It's spelled kind of weird. I think it's E-M-M-I-T or E-I-T, but his name is Emmett. And Emmett had, unfortunately, a very traumatic childhood. Abuse, physical, sexual, psychological, and he really, from a young age, he knew he had a gift because he liked to write, but he didn't know how that would manifest itself. He dropped out of dropped out of high school, went back, got his GED, and he's kind of wandering around in the world. And at the age of his early 20s, he said he was watching an episode of Oprah, believe it or not. And on that episode, they were talking about the therapeutic qualities of writing. And he decided, you know what, I'm going to be a writer. I don't know how to make money doing it. I don't know what's going to happen with it. But I am going to be a writer. And so I hope you start seeing a theme here. He put all of his efforts into one thing. He wrote one play. And this play, you probably know who I'm talking about now. He wrote this play, and he put everything into it. He put his life savings, which was $12,000 at the time, into it. I think he was 22. And went out and to begin to promote this play. For 6 years straight, you could barely get a handful of people to come see this play. I mean, he put everything into it, but it seemed like year after year after year, he just kept getting slapped down. Mind you, by this point, he had put all his money into it. He's living out of his car. He's virtually homeless. I mean, he is homeless. I mean, living in a car, let's call it what it is. He's homeless, but he does not give up on his vision. And he just keeps promoting this play, And 1 year, he has a breakthrough, and all of these people come out to see his play. And he starts to take that play and roll it into other plays. And then by 2005, he has saved up enough money to take these plays, and he moves into the movie business and goes. If I give you the name of the movie, you're obviously going to know what I'm talking about. He takes just like he took his $12,000 at 22 and put it into that one play, he took all the money he had made and put it into this one movie. And the movie cost something like $6 million to make, and it grossed $50 million. Today, he is worth over $600 million. He's a filmmaker, writer, producer, poet. I don't know about poet, but playwright, all of these other things. He has sold over 1 billion tickets. I need you to hear me on this. 1 billion tickets. His name is Tyler Perry. He changed his name from Emmett Perry Jr. to Tyler Perry. And to think this was a man who was living in his own car. Why am I telling you this? Sarah, who lived post-slavery days, black woman. Harlan Sanders lived in the backwoods of the Midwest during the Great Depression and thereafter, white man. And then Tyler Perry, a black man who's still living today. I really want people to understand something, and I was a history major in college because I love history. I love history because one thing that you can find is a thread between people that we call successful, this thread that you see, is that whether they're black or they're white, they're Hispanic, they're green, yellow, purple, red, they're woman, they're men, then regardless of nationality, ethnicity, what language that they speak, what time period they lived in, it's the same concept. People don't just become successful. They work at it and they push past failure. They push past defeat. It is very hard to find people who are one-hit wonders. They did one thing and they just skyrocketed to success and the rest of their life was happily ever after. And I believe that we have done ourselves a disservice because we look at people on social media and we live in this sort of Instagram-ready, celebrity-obsessed world where we come to discount the power of going through some stuff. The power of getting back up from failure. And, and I've heard people say, well, if I had that, I would be successful. And if I could be that, I would be successful. And life is, the success in life goes to people. It's not that they were told yes any more than the rest of us. It's that they push past no. John Kennedy said that successful people feel fear. I hate people say, I was fearless. That's a lie. We all feel fear. John Kennedy said successful people feel the fear, but they do it anyway. They do it anyway. They push past. Have you ever imagined that maybe courage is not that you don't feel fear. It's that you still do it even though there is fear. My mom wrote on her refrigerator, do it afraid. Do it still uncertain. Make your move before you're ready. And I believe that the continuum of the scriptures, because I got to go back to the word, the continuum of the scriptures, because I didn't want to give a biblical example today, because I didn't want somebody to write back on my comment and say, well, that was nice. You talked about Daniel, and that was nice about Saul, and that was nice about Paul, and it was good what you talked about Jeremiah and Jonah. But what about now? It's the same things. It's people who get back up. It's people who say, you know what? I may have been knocked down. I want you to read when you get home. Read Hebrews chapter 11. It is called the hallmark chapter of faith. And it goes through and it talks about Enoch who walked with God till he was not. And it talked about Moses who endured, seeing God who was invisible, even though he was going through what he was going through. It talks about Joseph who saw the exodus of his people, even though he was watching and would see that there was going to be 400 years of slavery in between the promise and the manifestation. It talks about Samson who was born into virtual captivity. His people were born into captivity, but they fought their way out. It talks about Gideon. It talks about David who was in the caves and was going through the wilderness. It is consistently, I believe that faith is consistently connected to people who take bold moves, who have problems but move past them, who have crises but move past them, who have drama in their life but move past them. They say that there is a power and persistence. Without faith, it's impossible to please him. But what is faith? We have come to water it down, and faith is just about I love God. But that's love. That's not faith. That's why Paul said faith, hope, and love. These three abide. These three abide. Faith, hope, and love. Faith and love aren't the same thing. They relate. Faith, hope, and love are three different things. And faith is the active conduit of what we believe. Whereas when we hope for the thing that we say we have faith in, and then there is love. And so there is a persistence in faith. There's a persistence in saying, I get back up. And I hope from these stories, Harlan, who is Colonel Sanders, Emmett, who's Tyler Perry, Sarah, who is Madam C.J. Walker, that you see in your own life, maybe, not just maybe, should I just push past the problem and discount it, but maybe your problem. I had a mentor who taught me this. He said that problems aren't walls, they're doors. The best thing that ever happened to David was Goliath. Had it not been for Goliath, David would have never known what was inside of him. Every great business is built on a problem. I guarantee you by the end of her life, Sarah, who's Madam C.J. Walker, would have been grateful for the fact that she began to lose her hair when she did. Because perhaps had she not, she would have never had the passion to see to it that she grew her hair back and the persistence to make those chemicals, to grow her hair back and then help other people with that problem. Have you considered this morning And this is the point I want to close on. Have you considered that the problem that you're going through, that the thing that you're facing, that the situation that you're going through has perhaps been the thing that's going to propel you to the next level?